It's story time. All right, we are going to review the book, The Secret History of Home Economics. And let me just start by saying that there is so much research and information in here, and I'm much more of a big picture than a detail person. So I'm just going to give you a few details. Many more details are in the podcast, and definitely download the Audible. This is just a fascinating read. It's the history of home economics, and really, it's the history of the path for females to get a college education in the United States. Like, this was basically the only path that you had to get a college degree in the United States. And it all started back with Catherine Beecher, who was Harriet Beecher Stowe's sister. She wrote a 400-page book called The Treatise, oh boy, details, you guys, A Treatise on Domestic Economy in 1841. And she basically said that people needed to be taught how to care for a house, and that it was the power of women to glue together a fragile society. And then she said this: the senselessness of an educated woman doing her own sewing while paying someone else to teach her kids instead of teaching the children and farming out the sewing. I'm like, wait, whoa, I'm listening to Audible. This is page 5. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Are you telling me that women in the 1800s recognized and paid to have somebody do their laundry, and that was seen as a positive because then they got to spend more time with their kids? I was like, what? Like, there is nothing new under the sun. Anything that you're thinking today, somewhere in the history, people have thought about. And you know what's so amazing about books? Just a little sidetrack, because that's what I do. Like, I think that we know the most about Benjamin Franklin because he started libraries and he was a printer. And so everything he did, he wrote down, and that's why we know everything he did. I don't think he was the greatest man that was of that generation, although I really, really like him a lot. I think it was the fact that he wrote down everything that he did, which is why we know about him. Books, oh my gosh, books are so powerful. Anyways, again, there was nothing sentimental about washing clothes, they said. Send it out to laundry and improve training, work conditions, and sanitations for those professional laundresses. I'm like, this was in 1900. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, housework was valued as a profession so that people could do what they were uniquely created to do. I'm like, I can't even believe this. So from 1890 to 1900, there were a group of people that started this movement of home economics in colleges. And then from 1900 to 1910, that really grew. And it really was a handful of women who never had children who really moved this forward in 4 different universities. You'll have to listen to the podcast or get the book to learn more about that. But I have always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, it was my entire dream. I got a husband so I could have children so I could be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I'm just saying, I've always wanted to be a mother. Like, that was all I ever wanted to be. And when I was a stay-at-home mom, I loved it. It was a much more challenging job than I realized it would be. And now I'm loving my second act of being out and creating a company. And I always earned an income when I was home, but my primary goal was to run that household. Like, I always wanted to run that household. But I have a home economics degree. I have a degree from Miami University in Family and Consumer Sciences. And I now know that is the last home economics degree you were able to get. And home economics doesn't even exist as a degree anymore. But I think, I just feel like everything starts and ends at home, right? That's where you start and end your day. Like, what happens at home impacts society. And if we've learned nothing during COVID, what we have learned is home is your safe space. And we are now trying to change work to fit into our home lives, whereas we've always taken our home life and tried to fit it into work. And a lot of the stories that you hear in media today are about, work-life balance, being able to work remotely and being able to support people at home and all of these things, in addition to the fact that home is actually a job and there is labor being done at home that is invisible and is unpaid. How do we raise these discussions? These are the things that you hear in the media today. But back when home economics became a degree of home economics, it was the economy of the home and how the economy of the home supported the world. And so this is where home economists who were science, it was a science degree, they would actually study the vitamin C content of green tea, how rats responded to thiamine deficiency, how the body processed the calcium in spinach, the best ways to soil fabrics for laboratory stain removal experiments. They roasted 2,400 cuts of meat to determine the best cooking methods. They found that potatoes stored in cold did not make good potato chips, and that honey had valuable food properties but is low in vitamins. So all these science experiments are going on. And then the war breaks out. And because the war breaks out, two things happen. One, the troops get sent over to Europe, the American troops get sent over to Europe, where there's a lot of famine and not enough food, so they sent dietitians. And the dietitians fed the American troops, who were the healthiest troops, and part of why we won the war was because our people were so healthy, because they had home economic dietitians with them. And also, when the rations started happening in the United States, I mean, it's not like you could just go to Kroger or your local store and buy something different to cook because you weren't allowed to have so much of whatever else you were cooking with. There were like 8 ingredients in the 1900s. I know there were more than 8 ingredients, but you get what I'm saying. When they say we need wheat for the war effort, so you don't get as much wheat, what do you do as an American? Like, what? So they were like, here's how we cook with corn instead. It was the home economics field that created that, disseminated that information, taught homeowners how to do that. Then we go into the Great Depression, and during the Great Depression, it is economists and dietitians who help people stretch a dollar at home. They partner with the government to create the current school lunch program that we have today. It's amazing. Again, we went into another war, and dietitians were essential in making sure that we got through that war safely and that our troops were healthy. The stories that are told in here, it's just a fascinating read. Maybe because it's my love, but anyway, it's just a fascinating read. And then everything changes in 1944, and that is what we'll talk about next week. So if you're thinking, that's adorable, Lisa, that you wanted to find a husband so you can have children so that you could be a homemaker. What a 1950s concept. Yeah, actually created in 1944. They actually created my dream in 1944, marketed it and sold it to the Americans, and I bought it, hook, line, and sinker. Yes, please, sign me up, barefoot, pregnant, homeowner. I want to be that. I want to be that. That was created in 1944, and I bought it. And you may say, oh, that is so backwards, Lisa. Like you should be a feminist, and you should be this, and you should be that. And, you know, I'm older now, and I believe women could do, I always believed women could do anything they wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was be home and be a mom. Like, that is what I wanted to do. But now I understand I brought to the table of being a homemaker. I have always been the CEO of my house because my mom was the CEO of her house, because my grandmother and my great-grandmother got this degree, and they understood that it was the economy of the home that made all of society work. All of society rises and falls on the economy of home. Case in point, as the food prices are going through the roof and gas is going through the roof, the entire US economy is just going back and forth on those two things, because it is the economy of the household. It is the economy of the family that everything hinges on. It's so important. And yet we take it for granted. Like, we take for granted, I will do the laundry later, I will do the dishes later, I'm not going to spend the time to organize that, I need to rest, or I need to do this is more important. There is an order to ordering your home. And when your home is functioning like a well-oiled business, and if that's too clinical for you, a well-oiled school then. A well-oiled business, a well-oiled school, like you would want to have your great morning, afternoon, evening routines if your whole house had a schedule and your whole house was organized like a kindergarten classroom was. Everything in your life goes better. Everything in your life, in your home, in your whole family's home, in your whole society, in the whole world. When the home economy has enough money and has enough time for the people who live in that house to feel fulfilled and rested, the entire society goes better. And when they don't, the entire society goes down. This is so essential. This is so important. And this is why it is so discussed. But it's not usually discussed in groups. You know why? Because it's at home. There are no cameras like streaming you out to the internet like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to make for dinner, we don't have enough food, but payday is in 3 days, I can't find any more underwear, and the washing machine is broken. Nobody's streaming that. Nobody's watching that. Nobody hears you. I hear you. And it takes a while to go from being overwhelmed, feeling like you're underwater and not in control of your home, to being like, I'm the CEO of my home. I run this like a business, or I run this like a school. Everything has a cadence to it. We've eliminated all the waste that we don't need. We've added in the efficiencies that are great for this season of life that we're in, this stage of life that we're in. That process will take 12 to 18 months. It's what we call the productive home solution. If you want to hear my story about sliding down into the pit of despair and then climbing my way back out, that book is called Organization is a Learnable Skill. You can find all these things over on organize365.com. Next week, I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about what did happen in 1944. Where did this weird, antiquated 1950s Lisa come from? How did society create her? And how do we send her back? I don't know. See you next week.